Did you ever wonder why the fastest selling book series of all time among women was about a young girl being in what some have called an abusive relationship with an older dominant man? 50 Shades of Grey wasn't popular due to shock or horror. Women everywhere spoke with their obsession with the series loud and clear. They are starving to be dominated and led by a man that they deem worthy enough to trust. In this segment of the Frame Masterclass, you will learn about polarity, her instincts to want a dominant man, and how that can keep your relationship thriving. And so we now have a power dynamic, which shows up both sexually as well as in the relationship. A power dynamic is of levels of dominance and submission. Now, different couples will have different comfort levels when it comes to dominance and submission. So, for example, I'm a really dominant guy. And so I like, when I'm in a relationship, to have a very submissive woman. It could even come down to where I might think of going to a restaurant. I'll give you a typical example. We might look at menus, and then I set the menus down, and then the server comes over, and I tell the server, hey, we're gonna have this, we'll have this, she'll have that, and I just order everything for us at the table. We'll sit next to each other, and then we'll actually share the food. So that's a small example, because just eating at a restaurant, I don't need to do this on first dates. It's not like some weird, control thing. A lot of people might watch this and go, oh man, he's so controlling. No, the girl that I'm with likes that. A submissive woman likes to feel she's taken care of by a guy who's that dominant. And that's just one example. I might say on a date or whatever, like, hey, we're gonna do something Friday, it's a surprise, I'll tell her what to wear, and that's it, and then I plan our entire evening. That's my example of dominance in a relationship. With that dominance and that level of authority comes a lot of responsibility now. I have to really be paying a lot of attention to who I'm with and making sure her needs are taken care of. I like doing that, though. It's a way that I can show her that love and care. A lot of guys are not completely comfortable with that. They want a little bit less dominance, right? And they want her to have a little bit more of a say, and that's okay too. Here's where we get into evolutionary psychology and our genetic wiring. We have not evolved past this, and this is what's called sexual polarity. There has to be a good match between your relationship partner and you when it comes to this dominance and submission. She has to feel like she's at the level of submission that she's most comfortable with, and you're at the level of dominance that you're the most comfortable with. Now, what she thinks she's going to be comfortable with, though, is often feminist social conditioning, okay? And I'm not trying to demonize feminism. I'm just stating it for what it is. It's what it's grown into. And because of the way we've grown in modern society, women generally don't trust men. Taught through social conditioning and parental figures who've probably been divorced, different situations, that this idea of a woman submitting to a man is somehow a bad idea. Well, that's only a bad idea if the guy's a bad guy and isn't gonna take care of his girl, right? If he's not a good dude and he's not trustworthy, when I say trust, I don't mean just telling the truth or lying, although that's part of it, having the ability to take care of her needs and having the ability to lead. If she can't trust that man's masculine frame, his ability to lead, his ability to pay attention and care for her and get her needs met so she can get her needs met, well, now she has to do it herself. When she has to step into a masculine framework to take care of things on her own, you lose that authority then. And she takes over and wants to start to take over some of that authority. The challenge that you run into with holding frame in modern relationships today. Now, you go to some more traditional, less westernized societies like Eastern Europe or South America, women are conditioned differently. You fall into a natural framework a lot easier. Hunter-gatherer tribes that generally moved into harem-style relationships with powerful landowner-type men in city-states and stuff like that, into our current status where we're at today. But we're basically a version of chimpanzees, which is a patriarchal, male-driven society. People are trying to change that. They're not going to be successful with that for a long time because a woman is genetically wired to follow a man's frame. That's where she's going to feel the most comfortable. If she's socially conditioned to try to control the frame herself, what happens is she steps into a masculine framework and she's actually less happy, less comfortable. There may be 1 or 2% outliers on this, but this is the general rule. Thanks for enjoying part 3 of the series so far. Click the subscribe button and the link in the video description to sign up for the newsletter for more stuff. Society telling women to do that that's what is destroying relationships. The lack of frame is often why your relationship will be destroyed. So evolutionarily speaking, women have evolved to follow the man's frame. And it just goes back to who was carrying the baby and who wasn't. And for most of our history, if a woman got pregnant, she was rendered incapable of getting resources for herself or protecting herself through the duration of that pregnancy after a certain point and then afterwards. Now, with medical science today, sure, a woman can have a baby on her own, but that was not the way it was through most of our history. So women evolved to follow that man's frame, who's there to provide the resources and provide for protection. Nowadays, things get scrambled around. Usually, oftentimes there's two working people in a relationship. She brings in some money, he brings in some money. All those things are fine. But as the man, you need to be leading your relationships, the frame of the relationships. And that doesn't mean, of course, that she can't take care of things or make decisions. That's called delegation. Back to that company commander model, the commander delegates down to his subordinates what decisions and things that they make and that they're going to take care of. So as the man, you can have the woman making decisions, but it's under your leadership. And so when we talk about frame of the relationship and having frame, what we mean is that you as the man, you have a strong internal frame on your own. You're leading the frame of the relationship, and she has her frame, but she is following the frame of your relationship, and you guys are aligned. Let's say the woman you're seeing has a different idea than what matches your frame and the frame of the relationship. When she is in your frame, she will defer to your leadership, which means she'll at the very least consent to setting aside her ideas or beliefs and following you and what you say, even if she might not completely agree. She might give you a little pushback. She might want to give you that input. When you say, hey, this is the direction we're going, she's following, even if she's not in full agreement. That's because, again, she's her own person. She has her own mental framework, but she is deferring to the authority that you have in the frame of the relationship. And that's what it means to have frame. What happens is your influence onto her will often cause her to transform her beliefs. So what previously may have been something she disagreed with ends up transforming and changing a bit. Usually it starts with her trying to understand where you're coming from and what it is as she's consenting to your frame. And then what ends up happening there is like, well, she's been doing it. So since she's been doing it with you and following your leadership, she has to sort of rationalize or understand it. So when she starts looking into it more and trying to understand it, and she's understanding it better, then usually she moves into some sort of agreement. This is how a woman's ideas will change, and she'll start matching the guy she's with. And women will do this very naturally. You'll even see it in the beginning of relationships or dating, where she's really interested or have high desire for a guy, and she starts adopting an interest in his hobbies or in his music tastes. That's her deferring to his leadership and framework. She's trying to understand more about him, and she started to adopt those ideas. Even the way maybe she presents herself or dresses, she wants to now defer to the guy's leadership that she's in desire for. That's not something you have to enforce to get her to do that. She'll do that naturally on her own when she's falling to her instincts.